Welcome to this explainer. We often take our hyper-connected classrooms and instant Wi-Fi totally for granted today. But the blueprint for digital education in Nigeria, it wasn't drawn up in the era of smartphones. Not at all. It was painstakingly built during the age of MS-DOS, dot matrix printers, and frequent power outages. Today, we're going to trace that incredible, decades-long transformation.
Okay, let's dive right into a tangible piece of history. We've got raw X-Base code from December 1990, right alongside the actual mock senior school certificate examination statement of result that it generated for federal government college Kano. At a time when X-Base was the global standard for database management on DOS, local programmers were actively customizing it to digitize administrative processes in Nigerian federal schools. It's just a remarkable snapshot of early localized software engineering. And think about the stark contrast here. Before this software, creating exam question papers literally meant cutting stencils manually on typewriters. Student grades were locked away in physical paper ledgers, and all that math calculated entirely by hand. The new way brought in i286 processor DOS computers. It automated the grading, minimized human math errors, and allowed typists to quickly master keyboard operations to produce digital stencils. It was an absolute paradigm shift for the faculty.
Section 1, the 1990 Kano Code, a microcosm of progress.
To really grasp the impact of this shift, we need to look at the pure ingenuity happening on the ground in Kano. Programmers were literally telling the computer exactly where to draw text using raw hardware escape codes, just to force a really loud dot matrix printer to print in bold. Crazy, right? And beneath all those tight coordinates, the code logic defined a universal grading key used across Nigerian secondary schools, dynamically pulling unique user identifiers to classify scores from A1 for distinction all the way down to F9 for fail.
Making this a reality required incredible on-the-ground logistics. They couldn't just drop off computers and call it a day. They had to build a whole ecosystem. We're talking dedicated second-floor rooms, air conditioning, standby generators just to keep those early 5.25-inch floppy drives spinning. Project supervisor George Varghese deliberately retrained manual typists and ran in-house software to manage grades and lab equipment inventories. By September 1991, it was a massive operational success.
Moving on to Section 2, the 1988 Pioneer Policy. Zooming out. Because Kano didn't happen in a vacuum, right? This was actually part of a multi-decade saga. It officially kicked off in August 1988 under the military regime of General Ibrahim Babangida with the National Policy on Computer Education. The goal was huge: bring computer literacy to the general public. By 1989, a pilot directive was issued to the federal government colleges, known as Unity Schools, making them the official testbed. But the initiative stalled heavily in the 90s, requiring a massive revival in 1999 by President Olusegun Obasanjo's civilian administration. Ultimately, this led to the creation of the National Information Technology Development Agency in 2001.
Section 3, why the dream stalled and those massive 1980s obstacles.
So why exactly did this initial 1988 vision struggle to scale? Well, the timing collided with an economic crisis that made hardware and spare parts prohibitively expensive. There was a severe lack of trained teaching staff, which forced schools to hire pricey external IT experts. The power infrastructure was highly unreliable. Without dedicated generators, the labs just sat offline. And the real kicker? Intense bureaucratic lag meant some schools waited over 3 years just to get 10 computers, meaning the tech was practically obsolete before they even plugged it in. Section 4. The Obasanjo Revival from 1999 to 2007. When the civilian administration returned in 1999, they knew they had to hit the reset button. They recognized that if they wanted to equip students with 21st century skills, these Unity schools had to become the ultimate launching pad once again. So, the federal government aggressively pushed to transition these specific colleges into modern, functioning centers of digital literacy. And this wasn't just another hardware drop. It was a massive, holistic strategy. The ministry deployed desktop workstations, complete with UPS units and generators. They focused heavily on teacher capacity building, training staff on the Microsoft Office suite. They collaborated with global giants like Microsoft and Intel, alongside non-governmental platforms like SchoolNet Nigeria. All of this culminated in the 2006-2007 curriculum modernization spearheaded by Dr. Obi Ezekwesili, which finally aligned the secondary school structure to mandate basic ICT literacy. Section 5. Bridging the digital divide and navigating structural obstacles. While this marked a major turning point, imagine trying to learn to code, but the national grid goes down and your school just can't afford the diesel to run the generator. That was the daily uphill battle. Frequent grid failures meant incredibly high operating costs and endless downtime. Schools still lacked dedicated IT technical staff to manage hardware breakdowns, and in the early to mid-2000s, broadband internet connectivity remained painfully slow and prohibitively expensive.
But perhaps the most visible, gritty challenge for the students themselves boils down to just two numbers, 5 to 10. Picture this. You're trying to learn a brand new operating system, but you're one of 5 to 10 eager kids huddled around a single glowing monitor, just waiting for your 2 minutes at the keyboard. Because of booming enrollments in Unity schools, the actual impact of those hardware drops was frequently heavily diluted in the classroom. Section 6. The lasting legacy of the first PCs. Ultimately, the biggest victory wasn't the hardware itself. It was a complete mindset shift. They took computing from a niche, after-school hobby and locked it in as a fundamental, mandatory pillar of public education. It established the absolute structural precedent for technology integration moving forward. That foundation, built on raw code and floppy disks, evolved directly into today's smartboards and e-libraries. Subsequent administrations have built upon this exact blueprint, launching ongoing federal initiatives that are actively working to expand high-speed broadband connectivity across the country's entire public school infrastructure. And that brings us to the end of our explainer, leaving us with a really fascinating thought. We've seen the sheer determination it took to digitize report cards using dot matrix printers and shared DOS machines. As Nigeria fully shifts from those 5.25-inch floppy disks to nationwide public school broadband, it begs a question. If educators and students achieved so much with raw code and limited hardware, imagine what the next generation will build with high-speed internet and limitless information at their fingertips. What does the next great leap in digital learning look like? Thank you so much for exploring this remarkable history with me.